This is something I've been wanting to say for a while. I said it earlier at the beginning. We call this the deep end. I said this all the way at the start. Remember that, like, I'm literally giving you, like, it's the deep end, but just barely, okay? All right? But just barely. What that means is, like last week, for example, you can read Joshua all the way through, but we read, like, in total, in this class, we've probably read, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 chapters of Joshua together. You know what I mean? And we did it pretty quickly. We kind of clipped through it a bit because my main goal was to give you general, central ideas that are beneath the surface of the book of Joshua. But it really is your job to go in with a fine-tooth comb, verse by verse, because every verse is there for a reason. Okay? So I call this the deep end. This part of the Bible, we are jumping quite a bit. When we get to the New Testament, we'll probably read a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb. But does that make sense, guys? I want to reiterate to you that it is something that you'll get it wrong if you think, oh, I'm coming to this class and it's like I understand everything I need to know. The point is there's a lot to know. Okay? There's a lot to know. I'm trying to give you the gist of it and make you feel like you're being invited out into the deep end. It's your job to continue swimming. So I know I already said that at the beginning of the entire class. Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh no, I said I didn't hear that.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw the text. Today we are in a part of the Bible that is really a transition section. Okay, transitioning from the era of the Torah, the era of when Israel was a people but not a kingdom, to when Israel becomes a kingdom, okay? With that, I wanted to I wanted to take stock of everything we've covered, especially because we have, like, a handful of new people today, okay? So this is probably a good time for you to join us if you want to continue joining us. I want to take stock of what we've covered so far. I want to offer a few minutes of Q&A to say, is there anything that we still need to talk about? And then we'll just do a little bit on Judges. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? So hang on. This is spoiling something. I don't want you guys to look at that. Okay. Here's our little exercise to begin with. Are you ready? I want you guys to pop quiz. Tell me, what is the biblical narrative so far? Okay? So where did we begin? And let's take those steps of explaining together what is the biblical story. So where does it start? And you guys are dictating this, okay?
Creation.
Okay, creation. Creation.
The beginning.
In the beginning. So God creates a good world with purpose, design, intention. He creates wild animals, he creates beautiful things, and he creates humans to be in charge of all of it. What happens next?
Fall of man.
Okay. Well, let's just say this is Genesis 1. What happens next?
I would say he creates creation out of chaos, right?
Yes, he does. Okay, so good. But before we get to the fall, let's do Genesis 2 for a second because that's important.
Yeah, so he created Adam, told him to name everything, and then he created Eve.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, so the creation of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve in the garden. The garden is a temple. Remember? The garden is a temple. Adam and Eve are priests in that temple. Okay? So creation, temple, priesthood. Okay? What happens next? You said it. Let's say fall plus exile. Exile. Fall plus exile from the garden. Good. What comes next? You don't have to get too detailed now. Let's start spreading out our details. What comes next? Babylon? Let's do something in the middle there. Noah. So the flood. What leads up to the flood? What is the lead up?
Nephilim.
Okay, before that, Cain and Abel. Cain founds a city. The city instantiates a culture of violence. In the culture of violence, the Nephilim are born. Okay, so the flood. After the flood, we jump to they're trying to do it all over again. They're trying to restore Cain's city in the Tower of Babylon. Okay, so God does what in response to the Tower of Babel? Sorry?
Switches up their languages and casts them all over the earth.
Okay, so the scattering of the nations, the establishment of, I'll just call this scattering. Okay, the formation of the peoples, the Gentiles, in a way to subvert centralization of human evil and authority, which is what we see in the tower. Okay, good. What comes out of the scattering? Abraham. Okay. Abram is chosen out of the scattering, right? As the people, as the nation. Okay. So all of humanity here is centralizing, building a empire of evil. God subverts their plan and he chooses one to do what? What is Abraham chosen for?
The birth of Israel. Israel come out of...
Let's talk more basic, more fundamental. Okay, yeah, so the gospel preached beforehand to Abraham per Galatians is what?
Salvation by faith.
Ah, good, yeah. But even more simpler than that. In you all will be blessed. Okay? In Abraham, all will be blessed. Okay, so everyone goes out, right? In the scattering, one is selected, everyone will be brought in to him. Okay? Do you guys see that? So the separation, God choosing to make a righteous nation in which everyone else will be adopted back into. Okay? Abraham's sons, is that what's next? Who's Abraham's first? Yes. And then who's his second? Good. So I'll do Isaac. And what happens in the story of Isaac?
He gets sacrificed, or almost sacrificed.
He's almost sacrificed, but he is not sacrificed. Why not? Because God provides. And to this day, it is said, on the mountain of the Lord, it shall be provided. So with that, we have clear as day, at least in retrospect, clear as day in retrospect, what is the story of how God is to redeem the world? He will provide what?
Sacrifice.
The lamb.
The lamb. In the story, he provided a ram. But Abraham said, God will provide the lamb. Okay, so was he talking about that moment? Or was he talking about something to come that moment points to? Okay, good. Good. Okay, Abraham, Isaac, and who? Jacob. What's the story of Jacob?
Wrestled with God.
He wrestled with God. Okay, so this is where we get into, he wrestled not just with God, he wrestled with God and...
The Spirit of God?
No, wrestled with God and man. Right? You wrestled, you strove with God and man. So why is that important about his story? Jacob is the one who is his brother's rival, right? Brotherly rivals. Okay, and we've already touched on that theme back in, the Cain and Abel story, a little bit in Isaac and Ishmael, but this is where it becomes readily apparent, the idea of family drama, right? And we spent in Genesis looking at family drama. And why is that important? Because it leads to something in particular. Where does the brotherly rivalry spin out into? Okay, in the story of Genesis. What is the quintessence of the idea of brotherly rivalry? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, story-wise, where you could say, what is the rivalry of Esau and Jacob setting down or leading into, which is the end of Genesis, the last story of Genesis, the story of the one who is persecuted by his brothers. Okay. The one who is persecuted by his brothers, but in his persecution, what happens?
Becomes like the second-hand man in Egypt.
He becomes the second man in Egypt and saves the world, right? Saves the nations. All the nations are blessed in Abraham through the persecuted one, the sufferer who was persecuted by his brothers. Okay, rejected. So suffering. Sorry, hang on. Okay, suffering savior. Suffering savior. Good. Okay, so that was Genesis, right? That was Genesis. Yep.
That name below Jacob, how do you pronounce that?
In Hebrew?
Well, it says Joseph.
No, Joseph. This is Joseph. I spelled it wrong.
P. Okay.
Sorry. My brain stopped working there for a second.
No worries.
Yosef, Yaakov, Yitzhak, Avram. So, anyway, yeah, they all sound different if you actually say them right. The craziest one is John. Anyone want to guess what that is? The Hebrew pronunciation of John is? Huh? Nope. Yohanan. Yeah. So Johann, right? Preserves it like Johann Bach preserves the Aramaic pronunciation for the Hebrew pronunciation. Anyway, it's the feminized, or it's the male version of Hannah. Yeah. Who knew that the name Hannah and John were connected? Yeah. Yohanan. Hannah. So anyway, it's a complete aside. Okay. I got to move this over here now so that I have more space. What comes next? End of Genesis. Okay, but we have a gap in time, right? So before Moses, what? Slavery. Yeah. You don't need a deliverer if you're not enslaved. Slavery in Egypt. There came a pharaoh that did not know Joseph. And what does this connect to? The idea of slavery. Bondage. Okay. Whoops. We good? Oh no, it's this. Sorry, it's this part. Okay, so then we need a deliverer, right? Moses. What does that connect back to? Right? Good. You need a deliverer who will lead us to where?
Promised land.
Promised land. Good. Well, let's just say Exodus, right? First, we've got to be liberated in the Exodus.
Was slavery 400 years?
400 years of slavery.
Before the deliverer came?
Before the deliverer came. Yeah. It's so perfect, isn't it? He's referring to the intertestamental period, the 400 years of silence from the end of the Old Testament to the New Testament, 400 years before the deliverer came, right? Okay, Exodus. How do they get out of the land of Egypt? Even earlier. And it wasn't the Dead Sea, it was the Red Sea. But, huh? Signs and wonders, what is like the ultimate sign and wonder, which is not the crossing?
The firstborn of every
Passover. Oh my gosh, am I running out? Sorry, let's try this one. Passover. God will provide the lamb. Okay? Passover, to liberate you from your bondage. Okay? Then the crossing of the Red Sea. What comes after the Exodus? We're getting way closer to now where we were, but what? Wandering. So they're supposed to go. Well, actually, no, it's not wandering yet. Sinai first. Yeah. They come to Sinai. What happens at Sinai? Law, covenant. What is the covenant? Sorry? Promise.
Like salvation, kind of, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, a means by which you can return back to where? God, who is in where?
The tabernacle.
The tabernacle, which signifies what?
The holiness.
The garden. Okay, well, I'll just say tabernacle. Tabernacle is the heart of everything to do with the Levitical law, right? The Levitical law is all about how do we operate in a symbolic holiness that represents that God is in our midst. He is dwelling with us, okay? It's all symbols, but and ritual purity and things like that. But it is connected to that idea of holiness, the idea of God is dwelling in the midst of us, right? Okay, then there's a golden calf incident, right? We'll just include that in Sinai, right? As Moses is receiving the instructions for the tabernacle, Israel is building a calf out of the gold that they took from Egypt and saying, this is the one who redeemed us. This is the one who rescued us. And we've talked about that already. Okay, then wandering. They come to the promised land. God says, one of your main charges is to cleanse this land. It is from this land that the nations will be blessed. From this land. So you got to cleanse it. And what do? They say, screw you and your plan, God. We don't want to take up the responsibility of conquering the land. We don't trust in you. We're going to die. He says, thus, you're going to wander for 40 years. Again, now we're like really close up to where we were. What happens in the wilderness wanderings?
Well, God already knew that they weren't going to trust him. Yes.
Yeah, well, in his foreknowledge, you could say that's true. But again, we're talking about how the story played out from even just from the human level, right? Well, okay, two big things happen in the wilderness. More than that, but let's just talk about the two that we talked about.
They still had to fight the giants.
Yeah, so eventually they have to fight giants. Well, yeah, that's not, we're not quite there yet. But yes, that was 2 weeks ago. Manna, okay, good. That's actually really good. So let's just put that there. Manna. What is that?
The bread from heaven.
The bread from heaven, the provision. Okay. God will provide the lamb. I am the bread that comes from heaven, says Jesus. Right? I am the bread that comes from heaven. The true bread that comes from heaven. So he is the lamb, he is the manna, right? Well, okay, so manna, then 3 things. I'm looking for 2 other things.
Moses strikes the rock.
Oh, that's another good one. Okay. Water from the rock. Oh my gosh, am I running out again?
No, you know what? It's because you're left-handed and all these pins are not. To angle that way. No, it's serious. They're
Yeah.
angled a different way.
Discriminatory.
I know, it's terrible, right?
Okay, water from rock. Sufferer who saves. He is the rock who was struck, right, to save the people. He says, go up to the rock. God says to Moses, go up to the rock. I will stand up there in front of the rock. You strike the rock. The water will come forth. What has happened to Jesus when he's stabbed in the side? Water comes out. Okay, good. I'm trying to, again, recap everything because this is our 26th meeting, guys. Okay, 26. I don't want you to forget. We're about to enter into a major section, so I don't want you to forget. Okay, there are other things in the wilderness I'm thinking of. In fact, both of these happened before Sinai. What happened after Sinai? Okay, I'll help you out. What? Okay. I set this up for you guys, and you're all dying. No, we actually didn't even cover that. But yes, I'm the serpent. Yeah. Shoot, I keep doing that. Sorry. Okay, bronze serpent. So you're all dying. But God provides a way. So there's another provision. And then what is the other thing? This was a long thing that we talked about. A long story. Yes. Good. So yeah. Balaam and the star prophecy. What's that all about? Someone explain Balaam and the star prophecy to me.
Balaam was like a secular, like a wizard of some kind, right?
Yeah, secular wouldn't be the right term. A pagan. Pagan would be the right term.
And then he was hired to curse Moses and his people, but he wouldn't. He blessed them instead.
Yeah. And what is the blessing? What is the ultimate end of that blessing? There's going to be a king who's going to come, and he's going to judge the nations, right? And all the nations will be blessed. Okay. All right. And then we had Deuteronomy, which was a summary of all of this stuff, if you guys remember, and a projection into the future. But Balaam really is the end. And then after Balaam, Moses dies. And what happens after Moses dies?
Someone takes over and enters the promised land for Moses.
Who's the someone? Conquest. I'll just put conquest here. Day of the Lord. Right? Day of Yahweh. And I ran out of ink. Okay, so this is where we going. Day of the Lord is, let me just do this. Flood. There we go. Good. You seeing these connections? Okay, I wanted to do this because I wanted to leave this for you and have you, and I've got slides about this, we'll go over it again, but this is where I'm opening it up for 30 minutes of questions, or 20, unless 15 minutes, I don't know how many questions y'all have. So if you don't, I've got plenty of slides to go over, so.
Got 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, seriously, I wanted to here's the deal. Let me tell you why I did this. This has been a lot of storytelling, okay? And a lot of symbols and a lot of, connections, again, all centered around provision of the Lamb. In you, all the nations will be blessed. These are probably the two central points that all of these fractally come back into. So the point is we're about to get into a lot more stories. We're about to go through a lot more history. I don't want you to just get lost in the sauce, okay? I want you to see where we are and to see where we're going, especially because we're in a transition period, okay? Does that make sense? So yeah, questions. Clarifying points.
I have a question.
Okay, Bob and then Daniel. So hold on to your question. Go ahead.
We're seeing cycles, right? Of repetition where God is making the point again and again.
Right.
Does that continue in the New Testament or past the New Testament?
The idea is the cycles, they end in failure most of the time, right? The opportunity for success is what's presented in the New Testament. Yeah, you could say these cycles, they are cycles that you can personally encounter in your own life, right? We wander in the wilderness at different times, right? We have to find the manna, right? God has to provide the manna for us. We have our own days of the Lord.
You see cities
built up. Yeah.
Where,
yeah.
Some of the same themes we continue to see connected.
Yeah. You could say what we have read so far and what we will continue to read, which will continue to be these patterns. It's an architecture of being, or describing to you sort of the blueprints of what life is like. Okay? That's one way of thinking about it. So good question.
Where does David fit in?
He's coming. So, I mean, that's important. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this, is because that's going to take up a lot of our conversation for the next many, many weeks. And I did not want to forget this before we got into David. Daniel?
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned that there was 400 years of quiet time until Jesus came. Was it the same amount of time that they were in slavery?
That's why he said that. 400 years of slavery, but you get to the end of the Old Testament, and Ezra, in the book of Ezra, it says, I think it's Ezra that's praying, and he says to God, "We're in the land." This is after the Babylonian exile. He says, "We're in the land, but we're slaves in our own land." Right? Send a deliverer, God. Right? How are we going to be liberated from slavery if we're in the land? It sort of confuses the whole idea of Exodus and Promised Land and things like that, right? Because what happens when we're in the land but we're slaves? That doesn't make sense, right? We need a deliverer to actually deliver us from the slavery of the heart, right? That's the meaningful thing. So, yep.
My first question is, how many questions are we allowed to ask?
My second is, where are the dinosaurs?
Where are the dinosaurs? I think yeah, we'll go, the limit of it will be 950. Okay, go ahead.
This is history. This is for us to have peace. God provided everything in this for a reason. Now there's a lot of other miracles and stuff that happen outside of just that. So, and I know that you're a history buff, and I know that they got books that are outside the Bible that are very interesting, that tell about God's redemption. But for whatever reason, God has chosen these to be our primary guide, our compass. But there's a cycle involved in it, like Bob was saying.
Yeah.
Have you ever read anything outside of the cycles that you see?
Like, what are you referring to?
I don't know. We live in today where it's Hollywood. So we love the Lord of the Rings. We love the mystery stories. We love...
Yeah. Lord of the Rings gets it from this. Yeah.
If you're not a believer, this is crazy stuff.
Yeah, sort of.
It's funny how people will believe in Star Wars.
Sure.
But they won't.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's God has given that. That's a gift.
Yeah.
God has given us that imagination to understand that there's truth in this, and it's a love story.
That's right. If you like Star Wars, if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like fairy tales, if you like the Marvel movies, superheroes, what have you, you're getting your appreciation from this, and you don't know it. Yeah.
Mythology.
Yeah. Mythology does not mean that something is not true. It means that something is focused on a very deep psychological level of consciousness, right? So it's mythological to say that Jesus is the bread of heaven. Another way, symbolic of just saying that is symbolic. You know what I mean? But because we're not talking about the literal, he has DNA.
And the difference
right?
is one myth is true.
Yeah, the true myth, as C.S. Lewis said. Well, it makes all mythologies worthwhile when you have a real one-to-one example. You know what I mean? So Tolkien, we brought up Denethor last time, the steward of Gondor who thinks he's the king, right? Yeah, it's like, where did Tolkien get that? You know what I mean? He knows where he got it from. If you watch The Lord of the Rings and you talk about, or you hear Gandalf talking about how the era of the kings had failed, you know what I mean? How, they grew lazy, they grew fat, the glory days were in the past, you know what I mean? Like, and he's talking about Denethor there, and we're waiting the return of the king. That's the Old Testament, guys. Like, that is the section that we're about to enter into, you know what I mean? Like, the idea of the failure of the kings. They grew fat, they grew lazy, they allowed Mordor to fester, right on their doorstep, and we're waiting for Aragorn, the true the true king, who is the outcast, right? Who is out there in the wilderness, who's going to come from the wilderness. And, if you like Lord of the Rings, you're liking the Bible, okay? Does that make sense, guys? Like, your love for Lord of the Rings comes from the Bible. You just most people don't realize that. So, is that what you were getting at? Okay, more questions, guys? Now is the opportunity. We've been sprinting for a long time, and we're about to start sprinting again, and so we're taking a little rest for a second. So now's your opportunity. Obviously, you can ask questions throughout the meeting and stuff like that, but
I didn't realize how much we've gone over.
yeah, well, this is most of what we gone over, except for the past 2 weeks in the conquest. This is just what is known as the Torah, right? The writings, the Moses stuff. You know what I mean? The stuff that he penned.
So, if God already knew Adam and Eve were going to fail, why do it?
Yeah. So you've asked this a number of times. Yeah.
That would say.
Yeah. That's all right. Well, I didn't. I'm not like, that's not a criticism. It's more like I can tell that that's an important point. Why do these things if he knows that they're going to fail? I'll preface this by saying that there's a couple different opinions on foreknowledge. So that will nuance sort of the answer depending on what sort of thought tradition you're coming from, as to regard to how foreknowledge, the idea of God knowing things before they happen, works. So do your own research on that level and think the idea of thinking about foreknowledge. Yeah. But I'll just answer sort of how I see it. The idea that God, let's just tease out in a thought experiment the idea that God doesn't create anything because he knows, it's going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong, right? What does that imply about God? So God says there's a possibility of me creating, but if I create, then things have the potential and will most likely, in fact, go awry.
Fearful line of thinking and doubtful.
Excellent. That's really good. Yeah. So it means that, number one, God, it sort of lessens God's love. It sort of lessens God's resolve. It lessens God's glory, theoretically speaking, to say that God, doesn't consider it worthwhile to redeem. You know what I mean? So
I suppose it'd be similar to like a man saying, I'm never going to get married because it's just going to go wrong.
exactly. That's sort of a false assumption about what marriage is, right? Yeah. God considers it worthy and considers it better and considers it more glorious for himself that he does create and redeem than he doesn't create at all, So would be probably one of my answers. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Can I make a stab at it?
Sure.
We want to get to heaven. God created a way for us to get to heaven. And we can just imagine what heaven is. The angels, which Lucifer was part of, separated himself from God through envy to sin.
Mm-hmm.
So God even allowed the angels, I suppose, to have a choice to continue staying in heaven and follow me.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that rebellion, Lucifer had some influence to take a third of them. And because of that separation with God, God don't play. And he sent him to that rock, which is earth. So for a long time, it said that the earth was dark and nothing was going on. Is that correct?
Just keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if he put Lucifer in his place, okay, you're going to be separated from me forever because you chose to leave heaven. There's also I wouldn't say that God is doing it in your face to Lucifer, but can you imagine Lucifer on this dark planet for a long time, and then all of a sudden light appeared? Oh, something's cooking. And not only that, he created man that has his son allow us to be part of the kingdom where Lucifer came.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
That's all.
I understand what you're saying. So it's a greater victory over the serpent that God redeems. Is that what you're saying? Redeems mankind?
Almost too good to be true.
Gotcha. The only thing I will say to that is I don't personally think that the Bible is saying that Lucifer fell prior to humanity. They fall simultaneously in the Bible. Does that make sense? That's one way of thinking about it, though, and people have thought about it that way for a long time. Yeah. So
I don't see where foreknowledge fits into that.
it fits into it because he's saying that God, in bringing this is there's a whole tradition that thinks about it this way. Hey, good morning, welcome in. That God is greater glorified in his ability to judge evil, right? That in the revelation of him as being righteous in relationship to evil, right? That he is righteous, evil is evil, you could say he in his foreknowledge he considers that a greater thing, that that evil is allowed to exist. Sorry? Right. Sort of that's a sense of, that's one way of thinking about it. People have thought about it.
You're saying that God can't truly know himself without knowing what he isn't?
It's not know himself.
Can't know,
Yeah.
What I'm saying is God has a plan even when we have a plan that we think is going to go.
Yeah, it's just one way of thinking about it. I don't know. There's probably a million different questions and answers and people who disagree with that. So a couple more questions. Let's move on from this point if that's all right.
I was actually going to build on it.
Okay, all right.
Because, so I like to preach the gospel at school, right?
Okay.
I have this friend, his name is Zach, right?
Mhm.
Zachary. And he asked me, he's an atheist, like a proud atheist himself. He said, I can disprove the Bible from the very beginning of Genesis. And I'm like, okay, try it. Like, go ahead, do it, right? And he said, if God knew that Satan would rebel, then why would he create Satan? And then thus Satan would, tempt Adam and Eve and stuff. And so if he's an almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing God, then why would he create Satan? No one's just going to lead his people away.
And what was your answer to that?
My answer was, well, first of all, free will, right? And even the angels, in a sense, have free will. And so he's not going to be a cosmic dictator and say, you're going to have to follow me or else you're just not going to exist or whatever, right? He's going to be a good, loving father. And, like, love isn't true love if you don't have the choice to not love, right? Because, like, if I just make myself a robot girlfriend, I'm like, buy me this or that, cook me a sandwich, whatever.
Can you bookmark that? Yeah. I just saw a video of a woman in Japan who married her AI. Yeah, no, it happened. So anyway, continue. Yeah, they had a wedding and everything. So we had the little phone. So sorry, what'd you say? Oh, okay. Sorry. Continue though. Continue.
But and it's like the exact same situation. I actually meant to say from like a girl's point of view or whatever, right? Like if a girl just wanted a boyfriend that was going to buy her flowers every single day, and if he didn't buy her flowers, then she'd start screaming at him. That's not true love because it's forced. And so essentially God doesn't want love that's forced. He wants love that has the free will to love, right? Like, because sacrificial love is the best form of love.
Yeah, so you good, and I'll wrap up this point because we're close to the end of the Q&A section that I said we were gonna, but we'll do a couple more. So I'll wrap up this point because we're knocking on the door of something really deep. In Revelation, it said that Christ Jesus is the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, right? What does that mean? Think about that for a second. Someone explain that to me.
That God already knew that in order for all this to happen, he was going to have to give his son.
He was going to have to lower himself. He was going to have to die. So he creates with the knowledge, not with the not knowledge. He doesn't say, oh, shoot, I've got to go sacrifice myself. Forgot that. Oh, dang. God creates because the point of the creation is that God expresses his love, right? Does that make sense? That's the whole point, is that he creates something actually other than himself and expresses love to it.
And he wants us to love him back.
Yes, to be reciprocal. Yes. So that speaks to what he was talking about.
Through faith.
Through faith.
Through
choice.
all the different kinds
Yeah.
of not through works.
Choice.
Let's sing them both, but because
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So does that answer the question? Sorry, go ahead.
Spoiler alert, God gets his way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what he always wanted.
Yeah. Is that speaking to your question at all these things?
Follow-up question.
Okay.
Along the lines of what you're saying. So I'm single. And I want a wife. Right?
Okay.
So, and am I okay to choose whoever I want, or is God going to say, bring me a wife because I'm praying for her?
Okay, I see. So are you predestined to marry someone particular? Is that the question?
However I go.
Gotcha. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you don't do if you're a believer, you don't do anything without the moving of the Spirit to lead you to, yeah, okay. Yeah, so God chooses a wife for you because you say, let your will be done in my life. Does that make sense?
But it's a choice to have God's will be done.
Yes.
Because you can go and choose any woman you want.
But that could lead to destruction. Yeah. So, huh? Not AI, not an AI one. Okay, but yeah, again, that is the most deep thing that you will ever learn from the Bible, in my opinion. That God, the entire point of this, the entire point of your existence, God will provide the lamb, okay? God pours himself out for you. That was the plan from the beginning.
I see there's an arrow on Isaac. Is that where Abraham...
The binding of Isaac story, yeah. Something I was reading Jeremiah this week, and I don't even know if I'll drive it home more when we get to later, but I don't even know if I drove it home well enough. Like, the ultimate evil as presented in the Bible is the sacrifice of one's child. Okay? So, I know you struggled with this story because of that. And the Bible is like, I agree with you. You have to understand the story, though. You know what I mean? Because it's not about the sacrifice of Isaac. It's about Isaac not being sacrificed. That's the point of the story. Anyway, it's about Jesus being sacrificed. That's the point of the story. It's about God sacrificing himself. So, anyway. Good? One more question.
So one day, poof, God's going to drop a wife into my life.
If that's his will for you. If that's his will for you, one day you will meet your wife.
I would see it the same though, right? If I may, I would see it the same as like it was one day proof Jesus came, but Jesus was planned from the beginning. So like your wife is already planned. All of it's planned.
Not all of us get married though. So.
It's better to not get married.
But the Bible says that he will give us the desires of my heart, and I desire
The ultimate desire of your heart is God himself. I'll just say this. Yes, we all get married one day because the vision is that we are married to Christ. Okay. So marriage is a foretaste. It's pointing towards something that's better than itself. Does that make sense? No? Okay. So when I marry a woman, when I married my wife, that was a symbol of the ultimate point of reality, which is my marriage to God. Heaven and earth united. Marriage is not an end to itself. It's pointing forward to something. Okay? So if you get married, you can exercise meaningfully, you can exercise that symbol, but it's pointing forward to something.
That's what he said, like Jesus was married to the church.
Yeah, so we are the bride of Christ. Yes. Well, okay. Well, we can go on this for forever. I'm like, I was about to say something, and then I was like, that's gonna spin us off in crazy directions. So I'm not going to. Anything else, guys? Nothing? Okay. Let's go into, I'm going to do more of this. This is what we've talked about, but I'm just going to give it to you again as we lead into this next bit, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is this big arrow here is onward to the era of the kings. We've had this whole stuff, which has been leading up to the era of the kings, which is going to be hundreds of years of history. We're going to have a lot of reading on David, just 1st and 2nd Samuel. Like, yeah, half of 1st Samuel and then all of 2nd Samuel is just about David's life. Okay? and then like you could say 40% or 50 or 60% of the book of Psalms is written by David. Like we're spend a lot of time with David, okay? The son of the great grandfather of Jesus, okay? And then we have all the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. You know what I mean? Like we have a lot. Things are about to get crazy, okay? So I wanted to make sure we knew what was going on here, okay? Remember exile of garden to tower. That's what's about to happen to Israel, right? They've been brought into the promised land, right? We've now gone back to here. You have Adam and Eve, the people of Israel, the priestly nation in the garden, the promised land. And they're going to be exiled by the end of the Old Testament, or close to the end of the Old Testament. At the end of the kingdom, the people are going to be exiled into Babylon, okay? The pagan, dark empire of humanity, okay? In you, all the nations will be blessed. Remember the scattering from Babel, right? One chosen from Babel. The people of Israel are the chosen one's offspring. And that it is said, in you, all the nations will be blessed. So the nations will be grafted in. This is what Paul is saying is now happening in our day when he's writing, right? And then in Abraham, all the nations are blessed, right? So this is why this little image here. Okay, so in this next section, though, it's going to be outlined very clearly, very apparent that it is the King of Israel, the anointed one. Messiah means anointed one. It will be the Messiah, the King of Israel, who will accomplish this. It's the King of Israel who is going to bring the nations into the fold. Again, the star prophecy of Balaam, a star will rise out of Jacob. He will rule with an iron scepter. He will bring judgment to the nations. Bringing judgment to the nations is the same thing as bringing them into the people of Abraham. And it's the Messiah who will do this, the king, the leader of Israel who will do this. Questions about that? That's what the next major section of the text is about. As we get into Judges today, it's going to be all about the fact that Israel doesn't have a king, but it needs a king for this to happen. So again, we've gone all over all of this. This is what we did here, just little images. This is now after that entry section, now all of the stuff here that we talked about. And then now we've had the conquest. Now they're going to be in the promised land, and there's going to be chaos in the promised land. Big time. Go ahead.
Quick question. Where again was the promised land?
So the promised land is that little, I call it a land bridge. I'm not the only one. It's a strip of land with the Arabian Desert on the east, the Mediterranean Sea on the west. It's the link between Europe, Africa, and Asia, okay? So here's a world map, right? So you can see where we are in the world. See that? This is where we are, right? This is the promised land, right here. That strip of land, right here. Galilee is in the promised land.
Oh, Galilee. Okay.
Galilee it's a region in the promised land. Yeah. That's not the best world map, but okay, let's just say land of Israel. Let me get some images here. So here you go. See that? So this, I've had a slide. I just don't have the slide up for you. That's Africa. This is the westernmost section of Asia. Okay? So if you go east from here, this is the Arabian Desert. This is the promised land right here. That's the Sea of Galilee. That little blue dot there. That's the Dead Sea. You have the Jordan running the length of it. This is all the beautiful, lush land, Arabian Desert. This is where they wandered. If you go this way, you'll get to Mesopotamia proper, and where Babylon is, Persia, Iran, which is Iran, and then India. You see what I'm saying? Just further. And then if you move upward, you've got Russia. And if you move westward, you've got Britain and stuff like that. Okay? It's the center of the world. That's the best way of thinking about the promised land. Okay? Center of all these continents. Center point. Okay? Make sense? Good question. But the point here is now we're in that land. We're in the promised land. And with that, sorry, I'm just making sure. Okay, yeah, we're good. We're in the promised land, and now there's no king in the land. There's going to be chaos in the land. That's what the book of Judges is. Looking and waiting for a new leader like Moses, a new leader like Joshua, okay? And again, we've already covered all of this. I'm realizing now I did have a map of the land. So let me just talk a little bit about the land. Now that Israel is officially in the land, it will be extremely important for us to be able to orient ourselves in regard to various regions and place names for full understanding of the text moving forward. It's important for us to know where things are, particularly because remember last time we were talking about, the last battles of the conquest of Joshua. They happened in the north. Why is that important? Go listen to last week's recording to find out why that's important. Okay. So this is that strip of land that we were talking about, okay, just a few minutes ago. And remember, North Point goes here, okay? So you can go here. I'll just say, who in here has been to Israel? Only me. Okay, sorry, I did not say that to brag. I did not say that to brag. I thought someone was going to raise their hand. It is crazy when you're reading the Bible and you're like, you find a place name, which normally for all of us and for most of my life, I skipped over it because it didn't mean anything. But then you read it and you're like, I know what that is because I've stood there. I've been there. Right. And that happens now. I'm reading the Bible and I'm like, oh yeah, I know where that is. It's pretty cool. It really enlightens and brings to life the text of Scripture. So next time North Point goes, they're going in February, but anyway. Okay, so this is the land proper. So we'll start low. Okay, so the south, when people think of the Promised Land as being very deserty, they're mostly thinking of the south. Okay, the south is what's known as the Negev Desert. It's like what's the one here in California, the Mojave. Okay, anyone here driven through the Mojave before? Yeah. There's nothing out there, right? There's nothing in the Mojave Desert. So that's sort of what the Negev is, okay? The Negev is desolate wasteland, chaotic, without form and void. That's the Judean desert. It's called the Judean desert because that's part of the land allotted to Judah. You also have the Judean mountains. The Judean mountain range, that's where most of Judah will live. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. The Judean mountains is where the tribe of Judah will live, okay? When the New Testament talks about the land of Judah, that's what is going on here. You have the Negev deserts and you have the Judean mountains. In the Judean desert, that's where you find the Dead Sea and the Jordan River just north of the Dead Sea. This spot right here, that is where Jesus was baptized, okay? And then when it says what happens right after he gets baptized? He goes into the desert. Well, that makes sense because he just has to start walking. You see what I'm saying? This is also where the Qumran people lived, the Essenes, right? Theoretically, John the Baptist might have been connected to them in some way. Okay. So let's continue north. You have the Jordan River, which is the boundary marker for the Promised Land, okay? It's the boundary marker in that what do the people of Israel do to enter into the Promised Land? They crossed the Jordan, right? That's also the case today. So when we were there at the spot where Jesus got baptized, on our side of the bank of the Jordan, someone shouted to someone on the other side, "Welcome to Israel." And then the person on the other side, what did they say? This is the country of Jordan. They said, "Welcome to Jordan." Does that make sense? That happened while we were there, okay? Because it's still that boundary marker. If I just swam across the Jordan, I'd be in another country, okay? The Kingdom of Jordan today. So let's move northward and then we'll move westward. So you go up the Jordan. On this side, there's this thing called the King's Highway, okay? It's called the King's Highway because you have two major roads that go through Israel, one on this side of the Jordan, one on this side of the Jordan. And again, these are major trade routes from Asia to Africa, from Africa to Europe. Okay, major trade routes. So it's a land that is, again, a central location for when it comes to the movement of people. You move northward, and where do you get? You get to another body of water. The Jordan runs southward, and where do rivers run? Downward, okay? So why is that? Because this is the highlands, okay? These are the highlands in Israel, all the way up to Mount Hermon, which is going to be the highest point, which has a ski resort. Who knew that there was a ski resort in Israel? There is, okay? Israel's a very diverse area, okay? It has what we call microclimates, meaning, it's not one ubiquitous climate throughout the entire land. Yeah, you're going to enter to different spots and it will look very different, okay? So Sea of Galilee and the Galilee proper, the Galilee and Bashan, where Jesus grew up, like right here, okay? Does that make sense? Something I actually should have said when I was in the Judean mountains, which I'll say now. In the Judean mountains is Jerusalem, okay? The capital city of Israel, of Judah. Also, something, Judah. Does Judah remind you of anything? Judah? Judas is it is just the name Judah. It's just a different form. Yeah. Okay, but I'll emphasize again. Judah. Yeah. So we get the term Jews from Judah. That's how you go from Israel to Jews. Judah. Okay. All right. So Jesus grew up here. He spent most of his time up here. He lived right there on the banks of the Sea of Galilee for 3 years with his boy Peter. You can go to that house today, the ruins of that location. And he spent a lot of time up in here doing his thing, okay? Multiple times, though, he went down. But they didn't say go down. They do go down. They go down in elevation. But they didn't say, what do you say when you're going to Jerusalem? We go up to Jerusalem. Why do you go up to Jerusalem even though you're actually going down? Huh? Okay, because it is a mountain. But again, still, it's lower in elevation than here, right? You go up to the Jerusalem because it's the cosmic mountain, right? You go up to Jerusalem because you're going up to the temple, right? You don't go down to the temple. You go up to the temple, right? The symbol wouldn't work if you said I'm going down to Jerusalem, So anyway, also the Dead Sea is the lowest point on earth. I'll just say that. That's a manifestation of a symbol, no doubt, right? It's literally the lowest point on earth. Isn't that wild? And it represents hell. You know what I mean? And it's the lowest point of elevation, right? Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? So if you go there, you're like, I'm the lowest elevation I could ever get.
The actual beach or the bottom of the...
No, the actual beach. Yeah, it's just, it's so low that you're just like, anyway. Yeah, and again, the water runs from Mount Hermon all the way down into the Red Sea, or to the Dead Sea, sorry. Okay, good?
I just wanted to say, I have a friend that I met at the gym, just a random person that I met.
Mhm.
My friend, he's Jordanian,
Mm-hmm.
and he grew up out there, and he didn't know the gospel or anything.
Mhm.
And so I was able to share to him. He was Catholic. He was never read the Bible, and so me and my brother would spend time with him, and we would go to the Genesis, kind of read all into that,
Mhm.
and even into John, we'll read into that, and there's we would have him read.
Yeah.
I wanted him to read. I wanted God's word just to start,
Mhm.
and there was parts where it was explaining
Places?
certain rivers, and he was all, it's crazy. He's like, I used to hear these stories when I was little.
Mm.
And he's crossed certain places when he was little.
Mhm.
And now it's the opposite of for you.
Mhm.
You read it, and now you're visiting, and it's surreal. He's lived there, and then now he's just reading things that are in here. He's like, it's crazy. It's in here.
He's like, I know where these places are.
Yeah, and I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But he just never really knew.
I cannot hit home to you enough how real the Bible is. Real places, real people. And that never comes more alive than if you're actually where it happened. That's for sure. To understand the reality of it, Obviously, there's the reality of in being enlightened spiritually in your life and stuff like that. I guess I just mean on tangible level, on a physical level. Okay. Then we have the lowlands, or another term for that is the Shephelah. That's where most of the agriculture is done. It's pretty hard to do agriculture up in mountainous regions, right? You know, long areas, big areas of cropland. So the Shephelah is where most of there's contests for the lowlands when Israel is fighting the Philistines and things like that. Oftentimes it's this land that is in particular the land that is being fought over, okay? Because you have the people of Israel, they pretty much are able to take refuge up in the mountains, but most of the fighting goes on down in the lowlands in the Shephelah, okay?
And that's why David spent most of the time in the mountains, right, in that region.
When he's on the run from Saul, yeah, he runs into the Judean desert, and at one point he goes into Gath. But yeah, that's right. He goes to an oasis called En Gedi, which again you can go to today. You can go to where David wrote some Psalms. So yeah, most of the battles in the Promised Land that we're going to be reading about, again, they happen here in the Shephelah. Then there's the coastal plain. This is where the invaders come from. The invaders. Who are these invaders that I'm talking about? Does anyone know what the word Philistine means? It means immigrant, okay? And the idea is the Philistines, they come from Greece. They come from the islands around Greece. So invaders from the north, invaders from the west, invaders from the sea, these Greek sort of connected peoples that are coming to take the land, okay? So that's going to, again, they're going to land the Philistines during the time of the judges, during the time of the kings, during the time of David, are going to land in the west, on the coast in the west. They're going to try to take the Shephelah, the lowlands. Israel, who just set up shop in the Promised Land, is going to be like, no, this is our land promised to us by God. Good.
Come by boat.
Yeah, by boat. Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. And okay, this is where it gets super interesting because I've brought up the Bronze Age collapse many a time, right? So now you have to think about, again, the fall of the earliest Greek empires, and like Troy, for example, you know, the Trojans and all these things. I know that the story was the Greeks against the Trojans, but you see what I'm saying? Like the area up here, now there's a big movement of people, both in Israel coming into the land, but also other people trying to take the land, you know, the Philistines. Okay, good. Just a little bit of history. So again, it's microclimates, it's very diverse locations, okay? You have desert, you have hill country of Judea, the mountainous region, you have the lowlands of the Shephelah, you have the coastal plain, and then you have the northern highlands, okay? Let me just, again, continue to enlighten you. So Caesarea Maritima, when the New Testament talks about, and Peter and Paul, they were in Caesarea. That's a port town. So that's going to be happening over here, right? When they're in Jerusalem, that's going to be happening in the mountains over here. When Jesus is in Galilee, that's going to be up in the north. When he's in Samaria, we haven't gotten to what Samaria is, but that's going to be in the Shephelah area over here, okay? What else? I'm trying to think of other major events that happen that like you instinctually know about. You get the idea, okay? Important to understand that the events that are taking place, they don't happen sort of in a nebulous vacuum, right? They're happening in real ground locations, okay? And then remember that this is the land that is said about Abraham. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go to a place he was to receive as an inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. By faith, he migrated to the land of promise. It's the land of promise because it's from this land that in you all the nations will be blessed. And it is from this land that on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. That is Mount Moriah, right? Where the temple stands. And, you know, that's where Jesus is crucified, in Jerusalem. Make sense? Good? So the beginning of the book of Judges makes perfectly clear that the conquest of Canaan was definitely not as totalizing as the book of Joshua made it seem. So the day of the Lord it's sort of pictured in Joshua as being this like these great victories and stuff like that. And it is for certain elements, but then it makes it perfectly clear that, like, you know, there's a lot of Canaanite survivors and there's a lot of Canaanite nations that are still in the land. And then you're going to have the Philistines. And so there's going to be a tug of war for the land and a tug of war, honestly, for the heart of the people. That's the main thing to think about. Imagine you are newcomers to the land, right? And you're just, you're just a guy. You're just a family, okay? And a couple generations ago, your nation entered into this land and led a great conquest, and now you're sort of coexisting with some survivors from these great wars of the past, maybe 2 or 3 generations ago. And you're trying to set up your crops, and you're trying to get, harvest from the land, and you're following the law of Moses and things like that. This is the law of your people, and you've got some Canaanite neighbors, and things aren't going well for you. And your Canaanite neighbor says to you, "You know what? I've lived, my family has lived here a lot longer than you. Okay? If you just, like, we know which gods you have to sacrifice to, okay? And we know how you have to sacrifice them. Just trust us. Come on, we'll help you. Pay us and we'll teach you, the rights of our people, because they're the gods of the land. Like, you're going to, do well if you sacrifice to these gods. So yeah, come take your child. That's what the gods of these lands want. And go saw it in half on this mountain and you'll be fine." Does that make sense? Okay. That's sort of the story of what's the problem with Israel, okay? And try to think about the on the ground experience and reality of that. About you're not doing that well in life for whatever reason. God is putting you through a test, and you take the fruit, okay? You take the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and you go after other gods, okay? The gods of the peoples who are in the land. Chapter 1 of Judges covers all of the failures of Israel to complete the cleansing of the land, setting up the central conflicts for the whole book. We're not going to read chapter 1, but it'll tell you this nation was left alive, and this nation was left alive, and this nation, and they were not driven out. They were not driven out. They were not driven out. There was sort of this a more complicated state of existence in the land than just they just conquered and it was that was it. More than anything else, the book of Judges establishes in the story of the Bible Israel's need for a king. In this way, Judges sets up the preceding books, or the next books of the Bible, which primarily focus on the successes and failures of the Davidic dynasty of kings. Let's go ahead and read. What we're going to read about is the cycle, what I call the Judges cycle, okay? If you've read the book of Judges before, you know about the Judges cycle. The Judges cycle is Israel is going to, have idolatry. Okay, they're going to experience the consequence of that idolatry. They're going to be taken over, oppressed by the Philistines, by the Midianites, by the Canaanites. They're going to, something is going to happen where God is going to give them over to the slavery, to the bondage of their neighbors. Then they're going to call out. They're going to cry out to God, "Send a deliverer, send a deliverer." And then God will send a deliverer and bring peace back to the land, right? Liberate the people. Is this reminding you of anything? Slavery, send a deliverer, establish peace. We're going through cycles and cycles and cycles. Again, there's going to be a few hundred years of that, if that makes sense. The word judge, don't think about a man in a powdered wig, okay? Don't think about a man in a powdered wig. The word, it actually doesn't call any of these people necessarily judges, at least to begin with. It will later on, but the point is, these are to judge is a verb, okay? To be raised up as the deliverer, okay? So it's shafat. The Hebrew word used for the judges of Israel is actually rendered as a verb in the same way that the English word judge can be both a verb. Can be both a verb and a noun. You see what I'm saying? So a judge judges. A judge is one who is meant to judge, okay? So in the same way, shafat is both can be a verb and a noun, right? In that sense, the word implicitly reveals what the kind of role the judges undertook as leaders of Israel. They were the ones who would decisively determine the outcome of Israel's fate in their conflicts, whether that fate is good or bad, right? So the idea is a judge is kind of like a superhero, okay? Think about a judge as a superhero in that way that, like, there's a problem. We need someone to deliver us. Who will deliver us? It's Samson. It's Deborah. It's Gideon. They will deliver us. You know what I mean? It's this one who rallies the people of Israel for a time. And then what is going on in the book of Judges is it's a like spiral, okay? It's a consecutive fall from this state of things are going really well, like they're optimistic at the start, and then they get really, really bad. Guys, one of the darkest stories in all of the Bible is at the end of Judges. Okay, we'll read about that next week. Okay, one of the grossest, darkest,
It was in your video.
disgusting story. Was it? Yeah.
It was.
Okay, yeah. I didn't watch them recently, but yeah, it's gross. And we'll talk about that next week. But the point is, let's think about this for a second. Let's also think about this on the ground reality. There's 12 tribes. Let's say you're part of the tribe of Benjamin, or you're part of the tribe of Dan or Gad or something like that. And at one time, your nations, those 12 tribes were united under a central leader who himself was ordained by the Most High God, your God, Joshua or Moses or something like that. But now you're supposed to sort of just be in relationship to God. And if the heart was pure, that would be fine. But the heart is not pure. It gets scared. Okay? It gets fearful. And again, it starts going after other gods, thinking it doesn't have what it needs. And so what happens is they're going to be thrown into this level of distortion, disillusion. They're going to start, corrupting themselves in the land. And so the point of Judges at the end of every time, it says, in those days there was no king, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And it draws an equation between, or an equal sign between, there was no king and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. They needed a visual leader. They needed someone that they could look at and say, this is our king. It's pointing forward for you toward the necessity of the incarnation, okay? God is supposed to be the king of Israel, but because they can't see and touch and see their king, the sinful nature of their heart, the lack of purity, the impurity of their heart leads them to sin, right? So they're going to get a king, but that king is not going to be God, okay? They're going to get a line of kings, but those line of kings themselves are going to have an impure heart. They're going to have a heart of sin. So what happens when Israel doesn't have a king? Things go chaos. What happens when Israel has a king and that king is corrupt? They get completely expelled from the land, okay? It's even worse for them, right? So they need a king who is God, okay? That's the incarnation. Let's closely examine together in real time the three most prominent vignettes of the era of the judges of Israel. So there's a number of judges. We're going to just look at three. We're looking at two today. Next week, we'll look at Samson. And then we're in the era of the kings after that. So we're going to see how it plays out, how Israel is able to operate when they don't have a king. One really good one, one okay one, one bad one that ends all right. One really good one, Deborah. One okay one, Gideon. One bad one, Samson. Okay? Each in their own way serve as leaders who are raised up by God to deliver Israel in times of great need. So Deborah. Open your Bibles to Judges chapter 2. Let's actually read that. We should have read that already, but let's read it. Judges chapter 2 first.
Deborah was a man?
Nope. Good question. Before we read I'll say this when we actually read the Deborah part. Judges chapter 2. Okay, let's read this. Starting at verse 1. The angel of the Lord. Who's the angel of the Lord? Okay, it's God as a man appearing to the people. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land that I swore to give to your ancestors. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? And I have also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. This is everything that I've been going over the past few minutes. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these things to the Israelites, the people wept aloud, and they called the place Bochim. There they offered sacrifices to Yahweh. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. So each to the tribal allotments, right? The people served Yahweh throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things that the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of Yahweh, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance, at Timnath Erez in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After that, the whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors. Another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. So JM did a really good job last time of talking about how many people it takes to bring you into being and how many generations and, things like that. And this is what the reason he did that is because he's displaying for you that it's going to be really quick. That, again, it says another generation comes up and they weren't there for the conquest of the land. They weren't there for the wanderings in the wilderness. They weren't there for the Exodus. Now they're sort of left to their own devices in the goodness that God has provided. And they're going to get fat. They're going to get lazy. And they're going to go after other gods. Okay? Verse 11. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh and served the Baals. The Baals. So these are the gods of the land of Canaan. Baal means Lord or master. So the masters or the lords of Canaan. Okay? They forsook Yahweh, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. They aroused Yahweh's anger because they forsook and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. Who are the Ashtoreths? Anyone know? So Baal is one deity and there's many named Baal in Canaan. Oftentimes in Canaanite religion, Baal has a wife or a mother, sometimes both, at one time, Ashtoreth, okay? And one is she is a fertility god. They're both fertility gods, one of bodily fertility and then one of land fertility, okay? So they go after these other gods. They don't go after Yahweh. So verse 14, in his anger against Israel, Yahweh gave them into the hands of raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, from whom they were no longer able to resist. So let's go back to this for a second. So they're in the garden. They take of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. They're exiled. They need redemption. They need a deliverer. They're sold into slavery, right? This is the judges cycle is the cycle that we've gone through here. Okay? Does that make sense? Good. So they were in great distress. They needed to be delivered. When Israel, this is verse 15, whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of Yahweh was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Verse 16, then Yahweh raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshipped them. They quickly turned from the ways of their ancestors who had been obedient to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived, for the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. Verse 19, but when the judge died, the people returned to their ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Pause. It's pretty cool how this judges cycle, again, think about how Jesus is the solution to these things. Jesus is the judge. Jesus is the king. He's the leader of Israel who never dies. Okay? Eternally living, right? Again, like think about the meaning of how he provides the optimal solution to what is being presented here in the book of Judges, okay? They refused to give up their evil practices in stubborn ways. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel and see whether they will keep the way of Yahweh and walk in it as their ancestors did. The Lord had allowed these nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua. Okay, so that was the judges cycle. It was giving you that cycle before we actually get into the stories. So it's giving you a little bit of a summary of the entire book. Whoever the author of Judges was, whether it's Samuel or someone else, some people think Samuel, he's giving you essentially like what you're about to read, okay? So let's go into Judges chapter 4, and we'll look at that first one that we were going to look at, Deborah. You asked if Deborah was a man. Yeah. No, Deborah's not a man. What does that tell you about leadership in Israel?
Could be a woman.
It could be a woman. Yeah, it could be a woman. Also, Deborah is the first mentioned prophet post Moses. Okay. There are some implications about that in regards to understanding how the Bible portrays and presents women and their capacity and stuff like that. Go ahead.
Just quickly about the Baals and the Ashtoreth
Mm-hmm.
and his use of the word "you prostitute yourself."
Good.
These were all sexualized,
Yes.
and then it talks about their evil practices. This is all the foundational stuff that was happening in pagan cultures.
Right.
That Paul went into eventually, and
Yeah.
like Corinth and some of these places where he talks about if you join yourself to a prostitute.
Yeah.
And these were temple prostitutes.
Absolutely.
And even the one thing in Acts where they said, the Jerusalem Council gave to the Gentiles was abstain from eating, meat sacrificed to idols and sexual immorality.
Right.
So the sexual immorality was really, again, tied to
Yeah.
the idolatry of the day.
Right. Absolutely.
So, these are the things that when they talk about tearing down high places,
The altars,
that
yeah.
we'll get to. This is what
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about. So all the symbolic things for Baal and Ashtoreth were these phallic symbols and different things.
Yeah. The Asherah poles. Yeah. 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 Highly sexualized
But
rites of worship.
in
Yep.
contrast to if you are prostituted, it's the marriage of God with His people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's supposed to be. That's the wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of what God has established, and then they leave that for this other thing that's not God.
Okay, I can take 5 minutes to talk about this, I think, because I think that this is actually an interesting point that you're bringing up. Okay, this is going to get weird. I'll just preface. So sorry, guys. This is going to get hopefully weird. Or not hopefully weird. Sorry. Hopefully not too weird. That's what I meant to say. Hopefully not too weird. Sex is meaningful. Sex is meaningful. God created it, right? And the pagan nations, they know this, which is why we suffer from a time in which, how do I put this? We suffer from a time in which we have to all read about Diddy parties. Okay?
What parties?
Diddy parties. And if you don't know what that is, you don't want to know. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Why do we have to live in a time where we suffer? Sorry, you walked in at a weird time.
What does my son teach you? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Are you gonna sit down or are you just hanging out?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, okay. I guess my point is, what did I say about marriage earlier? Marriage is a sort of a symbol acting out, an embodied symbol of you acting out what it means to be united to God, right? That includes consummation of marriage. And when we're talking about these pagan practices, right? They also have that thought about being united to your gods. The way that you unite to your gods is you symbolically act out these things, but in very corrupt ways that are unnatural to the human body. Again, the idea of pagan gods is that they actually distort natural functions. They're about power and control. And so when you talk, the reason I brought up Diddy parties is because the way that they think, people in these clandestine groups, Eyes Wide Shut, I don't know if anyone knows the reference to that movie, is that there's something spiritual happening here, right? We're tapping into powers of the other side. You see what I'm saying? And anyway, so there's a reason why the pagans in their temples, most of their cultic worship had to do with some sort of sexual deviancy, right? It's not a new thing that Diddy's just doing what the ancients did, if that makes sense. You follow me? It's the cycle. It's the judge's cycle. Yeah. So anyway, we're in Deborah, my dad's favorite judge. Explain why Deborah would be your favorite judge.
Well, she's the one judge that you can say really did fulfill faithfully her commission before the Lord of all the other judges, and I think it's extraordinary that in the historical record that she's a female judge.
Mm.
In a patriarchal society, I feel like it's God's sovereignty to say, man, I use everyone.
Yeah, really good.
And so I find that profound and inspiring.
Yeah, and she's as I said, the first prophet post Moses that's named. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's start at verse 1 of chapter 4. I'm not going to do much explaining. I'm going to read the story of Deborah. I'm going to read the story of Gideon. And if you have questions, just shout them out. And we'll just sort of talk through. I don't really have any slides for these stories. Okay, so we'll just I'll read them. We'll talk about them in the next 20-ish minutes. We'll be done. Okay, good. Starting at verse 1 of chapter 4 of Judges. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, now that Ehud was dead. This was the previous judge prior to Deborah. So Yahweh sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hatzor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim, because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to Yahweh for help. So let's just summarize that statement. Again, there's this Canaanite king who's surviving into generations after Joshua, and the Israelites did evil. They rethink about that story that I just gave. You have multiple farmers who are like, the rain hasn't come yet. I'm just going to go into that pagan temple over here, and I'm going to, go sacrifice my child at this altar here, and we'll be good, okay? And so they did evil in the sight of the Lord. So they actually think that they're going to do some great things for themselves. And then the Lord sells them into slavery. Okay. Again, I mean that metaphorically, going into this pattern. Okay. Verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh and Naphtali. Okay, so pause here. Again, this is what I was saying. You start to have those allotments of the tribal lands. So she was in Ephraim. She sent for Barak in Naphtali and said to him, Yahweh, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. So Deborah calls upon this military commander in the tribe of Naphtali, and she says she's essentially charging him to do the task of bringing the people out to war against this Jabin, king of Canaan, and his military commander, Sisera. So here are the players. I'll just write it down for you guys. You guys good if I erase this? Okay. We had a lot of fun earlier, but now we're done. Okay, so here are the players. Ready? Jabin, right? King of Canaanite king, and his military commander, Sisera. Okay, good. And then on the Israelite side, you have who? Deb. Good old Deb. And you have Barak. Okay. Barack Obama. So Deb is commanding Barak. Jabin is commanding Sisera. They're about to go to war with each other. Okay, Sisera and Barak. Good? Verse 8. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Verse 9. Certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman.
Oh.
Who's Deborah talking about?
Herself?
No. Who is she talking about? Who is Deb talking about? We haven't been introduced to Jael yet. Okay? To Jael yet. So Barak shirks his responsibility, and Deborah says, okay, you're going to fight a war with Sisera, but the honor will not be yours. And she prophesies that a woman will actually be the one to take out Sisera. Okay? So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. So Deborah and Barak go to war. Yep. Yep.
So because they were, doing evil in the sight of the Lord, he he gave them up to these people, right?
Uh-huh.
And said that he wasn't going to deliver them
Mhm.
from their hands. But then so then Deborah says that the Lord will deliver into the hands of the woman.
Mm.
So how does she walk in that confidence though? Yeah.
Well, she's number one, a prophet. She's raised up to be the judge of Israel. So it's her personal walk with God. She's been raised up to be a prophet. She's been raised up to be in the same way that Moses was. Yeah, it's similar to Moses. Yeah. She is one who is operating as the judge of Israel at the time. She's the one whom, when they have disputes, they come to her. You know what I mean? She's Israel's leader. So
it really only does just take one.
What do you mean?
It just takes one. It just takes one to keep.
Oh, one to stand up. Yeah.
To stay steadfast.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's a really good way of thinking about it. Yeah. God will always provide more than one. I'll just say that. Think about Elijah. He's crying out to the Lord, I'm the only one. God is like, you're so lost. Like, you have no idea. I've got 3,000 more that you don't even know about. Yeah. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. So Deborah and Barak are going to war. Verse 10. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali. The 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites and the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree of Zana, that word, near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had sent for Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Kadesh Hagoyim to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. So they're all going to war, right? Deborah and Barak and his men, and Sisera and his men. Deborah said to Barak, Go, this is the day that Yahweh has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and the army by the sword, and Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. So the victory is Barak's, right? But Sisera is getting away. Barak pursued the chariots and his army and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. So remember, Heber the Kenite, who was that? It was the one. It was a descendant of, and it was one who had basically ratted out that the Israelites are coming to attack you, right? Okay, so that just happened back in verse where were we? Verse 11. Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites and pitched his tent by the great tree. Okay, you see what I'm saying? And now so Jael, who is Jael? Jael is a supposed ally of Sisera, because her husband told Sisera, right? Okay, so he goes to Jael's tent. Jael went out to, this is verse 18, Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, Come, my lord, come right in, don't be afraid. So he entered her tent and she covered him with a blanket. So she's like, oh, you were defeated in the war here, let me take care of you, sweet baby. Okay, verse 19, I'm thirsty, he said. Please give me some water. She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. Verse 20, stand in the doorway of the tent, he told her. If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone here? Say no. Verse 21, but Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg between his temple and the ground, and he died. That is pretty violent. Why would she do that? Why'd she do that, guys? Sisera is losing in the battle. She comes and she's like, oh, here, I'll take care of you. He's sleeping. Tent peg. Boom! Into his head. Straight into his skull. Right? Verse 23. On that day, God subdued Jabin the king before the Israelites. And the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. Next chapter. Okay, chapter 5. Deborah sings a song of victory. Okay, let's read it. Verse 1. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. So here's a little poem. When the princes in Israel take the lead, when the people willingly offer themselves, praise Yahweh. Hear this, you kings, Listen, you rulers. Even I, will sing to Yahweh. I will praise Yahweh, the God of Israel, in song. When you, Yahweh, went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water. The mountains quaked before Yahweh, the one of Sinai, before Yahweh, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned. Travelers took to the winding paths. Villagers in Israel would not fight. They held back until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. God chose new leaders when war came to the city gates, but not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with Israel's princes, with the willing volunteers among the people. Praise Yahweh. You who ride on white donkeys, sitting on your saddle blankets, and you who walk on the road, consider the voice of the singers at the watering places. They recite the victories of Yahweh, the victories in his villages, of his villagers in Israel. Then the people of Yahweh went to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah, wake up, break out in song. Arise, Barak, take captive your captive, son of Abinoam. The remnant of the nobles came down. The people of Yahweh came down to me against the mighty. Some came from Ephraim, whose roots were in Amalek. Benjamin was with the people who followed you. From Machir, curtains came down. From Zebulun, those who bear a commander's staff. The princes of Issachar were there with Deborah. Yes, Issachar was with Barak, sent under his command into the valley. In the districts of Reuben, sorry, I just had to. His name is Reuben. So in the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Why did you stay among the sheep pens to hear whistling for the flocks? In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of the heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he linger by the ships? Asher remained on the coast, stayed in his coves. The people of Zebulun risked their very lives, so did Naphtali on the terraced fields. The distinction is being drawn between those tribes that did not come out and fight and those that did. Verse 19, kings came, they fought. The kings of Canaan fought. At Tanakh, by the waters of Megiddo, they took no plunder of silver. From the heavens, the stars fought. From their courses, they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away, the age-old river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, be strong. Then thundered the horses' hooves, galloping, galloping go the mighty steeds. Curse Meroz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse its people bitterly, because they did not come to help Yahweh against the mighty. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, she gave him milk, in a bowl fit for nobles she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank, he fell, there he lay. At her feet he sank, he fell, where he sank, there he fell, dead. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she cried out, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed? The wisest of her ladies answered her. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, are they not finding and dividing the spoils? A woman or two for each man, colorful garments as plunder for Sisera, colorful garments embroidered, highly embroidered garments for my neck, all this as plunder. So may all your enemies perish, Yahweh. But may all who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. Then the land had peace for 40 years. Wow, that was a lot. It's pretty cool reading like ancient war poetry. You know what I mean? Like I feel pretty cool as I recite an ancient war poem. Thoughts on that though? Thoughts on that? So let me give one last summary of the story of Deborah. Okay? So remember, Deborah is the first named post-Moses prophet, right? She's the judge of Israel during the age of oppression under King Jabin. She's the enemy of the Canaanite King Jabin. She was the leader of Israel and strategist during the war with Sisera. She's one who secures 40 years of peace for Israel. King Jabin of Canaan oppresses Israel by waging war against them with chariots. Deborah, the prophet, calls on the warrior Barak to defeat Jabin's military leader Sisera. Sisera is routed in battle and flees to Jael, a woman presumed to be his ally. Yet Jael sides with Israel and assassinates Sisera in his sleep, as Deborah prophesied. Deborah leads Israel in a victory song about how the armies of heaven fought against Sisera and honors Jael. Woo! That was a lot. What do you guys think?
Man, what a story.
Pretty cool story, huh? It could be a movie.
Exactly.
I always say this, like I like, guys, the Bible's so cool, man. Like, especially these Old Testament stories. Like, if you set it to film, it'd be get the popcorn out, you know. Other thoughts?
Gathering is perhaps she was God led in doing that.
Yeah. If you're a prophet, you're the mouthpiece of God, meaning you're the one chosen by God to reveal God to the nations, or reveal God to the nation, and then as a consequence, the nations, right?
Jael.
Oh, Jael. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Remember, Deborah prophesied that Sisera will fall by a woman's hands, right? So go ahead.
I'm actually using a study tool while I'm reading this. And it says, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots, right? And it says, we know from Judges 5, verses 4 to 5 and verse 21 that God helped Israel to victory by bringing a flash flood and the muddy conditions made the chariots of iron a hindrance, not a help in the battle.
It's good.
Because like they were really technologically advanced with like those chariots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whenever the Bible brings up chariots, it means like, oh no, you're in trouble. You're fighting against an enemy that is way more powerful than you, technologically speaking. And so when you have Israel, who are these sort of scattered tribes, these, these farmers and these sheep herders, you know what I mean? Like, the idea is, how are they going to defeat chariots, And so God himself will fight for them, he will call on heaven and earth. So did someone notice that in the poem? What did it say? It said, the stars fought for Israel. What does she mean by that? Where is it? I don't know where it is. But you guys saw it, right? What does it mean that the stars fight for Israel? What does that remind you of from last week? Sun stands still over Gibeon and moon over the valley of Ajalon, right? The book of Joshua and his calling upon heavenly beings to fight for the people, right? Remember, stars, they represent what? Yeah, in the pagan sense, gods, or in the Hebrew sense, Elohim, right? The spiritual beings, okay? So there's a war on the earth, there's a war in heaven, right? The stars fought against Sisera.
I'm pretty sure it's verse 21.
21? Okay, I was like looking for it. 20. From heaven, the stars fought in their courses. What does in their courses mean? In their paths, yeah. So remember how I talked about part of the reason why you connect, or ancient people connected stars with the spiritual realm, is because they recognized patterns in the stars, patterns of power, right? So as the constellations, they move, this is where, if you take it too far, you get into astrology, right? But the stars move and it determines the fate of stuff on the ground, right? Make sense?
I have a question.
Yep.
So this is some judges right here. This is the first time Jael has been introduced, right?
Mhm.
And you know how there's just certain prophets, they kind of have a little background story or
Mm.
whatever. They show how they became a prophet.
Mm.
So for her, like, was it be like the same thing? Like, God spoke to them and to give them messages, or how was that?
You mean because Deborah didn't name the person?
I'm just saying, as far as like prophets go, like,
How did Deborah know? Yeah. Well, that's sort of the idea, is Deborah is given a word of the Lord of what's going to happen, and then it happens. That's sort of how prophecy works. So
How it happens. It's like,
but Jael though, like, because what makes a prophet?
what makes a prophet?
Yeah.
God chooses you to be a prophet.
So
Yeah.
you hear from God, right?
Yeah.
But Jael wasn't a prophet. Right?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, Deborah's the prophet. Her actions were prophesied.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I was saying.
Gotcha. Yeah. Deborah prophesied about Jael, who would be the one who took out Sisera. This is a really good victory story, right? Ideal. I don't think I have time. Well, I can read the Gideon story and we could talk about it for like 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
So was Jael just trying to be on the right side of history, or was she being God?
It's sort of both. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Hagar, She's like, I'm with these guys. who can know about her own personal life? There were a lot of details in the Song of Deborah that were not in the story that we just read. A lot of assumed knowledge, right? She brought up names and things that like were not in the story beforehand, right? What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Well, the song is sung afterwards. She's recounting again. Yeah, this sort of goes into the making of the Bible thing. The story of Deborah is, you could say, a separate source from the Song of Deborah. You see what I'm saying? Because one has way more details than the other, right? And so there are two accounts of the same thing that are united in the book of Judges. Yeah, different genres. Yeah, exactly. So you could say, like, this is theoretical, but maybe at one time there was, or how about this? The book of the Wars of the Lord, right? Let's assume that that's a songbook and it also has the Song of Deborah in it. And then the prophet took the Song of Deborah from the books of the Wars of the Lord and put it, again, I'm just making that up, but you see what I'm saying? Like, that's an idea. Huh?
Got
History and poetry. Yep. Yep. Good.
I just thought it was so crazy while I was reading this. It says, not a shield or spear is seen among 40,000 in Israel. It's so crazy. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't even have 40,000 people, none of them had a single weapon.
Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Does Deborah prophesy something before this? Like, why does
What makes her a prophet? Like, in the eyes of Israel?
why do the Israelites just like trust her to go to battle without even?
Yeah, so again, this is where, again, there's a lot of assumed knowledge going into the story. It's not giving you reasons as to like her background. It's saying to you, in Israel, she was a prophet. You know what I mean? Like Samuel is one of those that it gives you like a whole background of like the origins of Samuel.
I was just trying to understand like why they trusted her, or like why they knew she was a prophet.
So in ancient Israel, you are seen to be a prophet if you have accurate predictive power. Okay? It's God who knows the future. And if you have someone who steps up and announces to Israel what's going to happen, and then it happens, you're going to be paid attention to for sure. You're going to be considered.
It's safe to assume that she made like prophecies like before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's what makes her a prophet. Yeah. 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 So for whatever reason, she was chosen by God to be Israel's leader, and her entire life was leading up to this moment, which we're now reading about thousands of years later. You know? So pretty cool. Isn't that amazing, guys? How we can, in no way, shape, or form ever have any contact with the flesh and blood Deborah, at least in this life, right? She had no idea people on the other side of the world would be talking about her. You know? It's pretty cool. Other thoughts? I don't know if I'm going to read Gideon. Go read Gideon. It's a sort of it's a middle point between the good judges as represented in Deborah and the bad judges as represented in Samson. Okay? Gideon starts off well-intentioned. He has some victories. He has a pretty stellar failure, and he makes an idol god. Okay? So, yeah, go ahead and read the story of Gideon on your own time. We covered a lot today, and I did all of this recap because, again, to reiterate, what I wanted you to know is that as we get into David and the Psalms and the prophets, the era of the kings, the exile, everything that we have to cover before we get to the New Testament and to Jesus, I wanted you to understand where we've come from, where we're going, okay? It's going to be exciting when we're getting into my favorite part of this study. That's all I'll say. We're getting into the parts that I love, which is particularly Isaiah and the Psalms. That's going to be fun when we get there, okay? So we're getting there.
So how many chapters is it? Because I know it starts in 6, right? And when does it end? Like the story of Gideon?
I think 2 or 3. No, it's just 2. 6 and 7. Oh, no. It continues, actually. Gideon's ephod starts at, so he's still alive in verse 22 of Judges 8. I think it goes to the end of chapter 8. Yeah. So you can read 3 chapters. I just didn't want, to try and race through it. So.
Quick comment. Just the Bible is up to this point is showing us that people can prophesy, can have dreams, can have visions, and these things of the heart. I mean, they're common in, like you're saying, people knew that she was a prophet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these are practices of connection with God that are known.
Yeah.
Throughout the Bible to this point even.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying that our culture has become so secularized, so
Materialized. Yeah.
brain,
Yeah.
so to speak, that
Right.
we've lost a lot of, even in the church, a sense of what was their norm.
Yeah.
It's not our norm.
Right. It's a really good point.
If you guys do read the story of Gideon, I'll just go over these 2 slides. So Gideon, he was a judge during an age of oppression. He was a farmer turned warrior, and he tests God, and God lets him. And he has some successes, and then he becomes idolatrous. But he's Gideon the farmer. Midianites oppress Israel by destroying their crops, causing a famine. The farmer Gideon is approached by the messenger of Yahweh, but Gideon does not immediately recognize his God. Gideon is tasked with tearing down the idol statues in his village and is charged with bringing justice against Midian. Gideon musters an army that is culled down to a mere 300 warriors, and then in a grand display with torches and shofars, God gives them the victory. Gideon later goes awry, creating an idol of gold in his hometown. Why, Gideon? Why?
Why'd you do it?
It's really cool though, because there are many times where the angel of the Lord will appear in the stories of Judges, and people just don't know who this is, right? Whereas at the beginning of the story, the angel of the Lord appears, and that doesn't happen. Okay, so when the angel of the Lord appears and they don't realize that it's Yahweh, it sort of shows you that they are getting more and further away from their understanding of a recognition of their ancestral God, right?
So when it says an angel comes down to them to speak to them the message or whatever, is it always talking about the Spirit of God, or is some?
Okay, yeah, great question. Messenger of Yahweh is the correct pronunciation. It's not the Spirit. It's what theologians throughout history have considered to be pre-incarnate Jesus, not a created being. When we think of angel, we think of created being. That's just because angel in our language means spiritual being that is not God. What it means in the Hebrew, malach, and in previous meetings we went through this ad nauseum, but malach means messenger. The messenger of Yahweh speaks as Yahweh. He is Yahweh. In this passage himself, he came to Israel and he said, I brought you out of Egypt. I made a covenant with you. Right? And so it's early manifestations of Trinitarian doctrine within the Bible.
Send like Gabriel down.
It's not Gabriel. It's not Michael. Those are created beings. The angel of Yahweh is Yahweh as a man. Okay? Not a created being. Okay? Angel doesn't mean created being in the Hebrew. It just means someone acting as a messenger. Jesus is the messenger of his Father. Okay? Does that make sense? Angel of the Lord. Again, I didn't make that up. The earliest church fathers talked about it that way. Okay? So, good?
Another pattern that occurs to me in this too is that when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. So basically, God is telling Gideon, this is how I see you.
Yeah, good.
And the same thing happened with Moses.
Yeah.
When the angel of the Lord tells Moses, you're going to be the deliverer of your people.
Right.
In both cases, Moses and Gideon don't see themselves this way.
Yeah.
And they argue with God. They say, I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
And this is a pattern that continues in Scripture.
Yeah.
As we go forward, we'll see more of that.
Reminds me of Jesus saying to Peter, I say, you are Peter. And on this rock I will build my church. Yeah. Yeah, before I knew you called you.
You're a prophet. You
Yeah.
guys know you got the wrong guy.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this negative self-view comes up in the people, in sinful people. And God is saying, this is who you are. I know who I made.
That's it.
Awesome, guys. Well, how are we feeling? Israel will spin out of control next time. Get ready for a really dark story, okay? Samson, the very dark story, and then the kings, okay? And we're going to do House of David. We're going to do another movie night with an episode of House of David. if you haven't seen it. Also, guys, I unfortunately have to tell you we're not meeting next week. Okay? So we'll come back the next week and things will spin out of control. Not meeting next week. The 30th is when we come back. Okay? I'm going up to Sacramento next week. Cool? Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much.